came in here with. One of them I got just as soon as I got here. One of them I got minutes ago. Can't preach all three of them. I guess you're ready to figure out what to preach is what time you want to eat. I got about a 15-minute one. That might be too soon. I got about maybe a 30-minute one. That might be right about on time. I got about an hour one. That's the one we'll go with. That's the one we'll do. Pastor's in charge. Turn with us to Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1. We'll preach a whole bunch. No, I'm just kidding. Genesis 1 and 1. Genesis 1 and 1. If you happen to have an actual Bible in your hand, you can turn to Genesis 1 and 1 and Revelation chapter 10. If you're really talented, if you can hold one finger on one and flip to the other, like we used to do before we had these cell phones and everything. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1, and then I'll go to Revelation chapter 10. I'm having a wonderful time here. I miss probably my best friend in the last 10 years of my life, I would say. I miss just one-on-one interaction with your pastor. And I've had several chances at that the last couple of days. That's been wonderful. I also appreciate this little house here that the church is supporting and keeping up. I'm sure Sister Lamb and the children have a lot to do with that. I've been sleeping a lot since I've been here because I haven't slept hardly at all the last several days. So if you happen to knock on the door, I will answer it. I'm a light sleeper, but you'll tell probably when I answer it that I've probably been asleep. But it's been good, sleeping and drinking coffee. I tell my wife all the time, makes her so mad. She can't. I look her right in the eye and I get that sweet, soft look in my face and I say, "Baby," she says, "Yes." I said, "I love you and coffee." I used to pause. I'd say, "I love you," and when she'd start to say, "I love you too," I'd say, "And coffee." And she wouldn't say the other part. So now, we was in town with my dad. I know you understand, hold on. We was in town with my dad. I looked at my wife and I said, "I love you." And she didn't say nothing back. And my dad said, "Aren't you going to say nothing back?" She says, "I'm waiting to see what else he's going to say." I don't know who the guy is somewhere down South America that found that little brown bean and decided to grind it up and run some water through it and make a hot drink out of it. But if I made it, I'd kiss him on the mouth. Man, I love that stuff. If you can't tell them, have a good time. I always have a good time when I'm in church, when I'm in revival. Praise God. Let me read a little. Genesis 1 and 1. Are we on the internet live around the world? Thank God. I just said I was going to kick a man on the mouth. You don't know what my enemies will do with that. Genesis 1 and 1, the Bible says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form." Say without form.
Without form.
"And void. And darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." Genesis 1 and 1 and 1 and 2. Quickly now, Revelations 10 and 5 and 6. Revelations 10 and 5. "And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that there are in, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea and the things which are therein, that there should be time no longer." Praise God. You may be seated if you like. It's very important for us to get these two phrases, without form and time no longer. It occurred to me in reading my Bible this last year that there is a space of time that is indicated at the beginning of the space in Genesis, and a space of time, the same space of time that it speaks of the ending of that space in Revelation. That space that is talked about, what God created in humans until He will stop it, is what you and I call life. Oftentimes, the word life is a happy word for us. I love my life. Oh, I feel so alive. But oftentimes, we use the word life in a very derogatory sense, because when we're talking about life, we're talking about how America's going down and how hard the struggles are and my job and my bills and my enemies, and it's just life. What I want to talk about tonight is something that a thought that I call the merciful structure of life. The merciful structure of life. Or you could just simply say, if you want to, that Brother Sloggett preached tonight on life really ain't that bad. Life really ain't that bad. See, in Genesis 1 and 2, the Bible specifies that earth was without form. This is actually a very descriptive and explanatory verse to me. By studying all of the verses around it, it actually appears to be telling us that the world in which we now live, back then, had no system. It had no rules. It had no basic form or format of how things are and how things get done. An earth that is extremely difficult for you and I to comprehend, because we live in a world of cycles and regulations, both humanistic and natural. We live in a world with seasons and time zones and a work week and a monthly billing cycle and school days and vacation days and curriculum and overtime pay and anniversaries and holidays and sonic booms and baby boomers and Generation X and so on and so on and so on. And we have to keep track of the format of life. I had to do it just today. I was calling my wife and I was calling my assistant and I was calling one of my managers, and I had to keep track of what time zone I'm in, because I'm not currently in the time zone that they're in. And when it was 5 o'clock, it was 4 o'clock, and I was keeping track of the format of life. None of this format existed in Genesis 1 and 2. That's what he was saying. The structure of life had not been created yet. For you computer geeks out there, the world was not yet formatted. It was without form. Then we jump all the way ahead to Revelation chapter 10 and find that the angel, on the power and authority of Him that liveth forever and ever, Him who created heaven and earth and all things that therein are, will eventually stop the systematic structured cycle of events that we currently call life. He showed us where He started it, and then He shows us where He'll stop it. And once again, after Revelation 10, these things that we call life will not exist any longer. No more calendars, no more clocks, no more... Y'all with me? After Revelation chapter 10, there's no jobs, there's no housing, there's no spring, there's no summer, there's no winter, there's no divorce. It's all over. In a lot of ways, it will again be as it was in Genesis 1 and 2, without form. So taking into consideration all eternity past before Genesis and all eternity future after Revelation, in the middle is this structure of life and calculations that generally run our lives and control our lives. And it is only lasting for a blip of a second compared to all of the time that it didn't exist and all of the time that once again it won't exist. So where did the structure of life come from? And why did it happen? Why do we have bills? Why do we have calendars? Why do we get older? Now, to start out with, immediately following Genesis 1 and 2, we see that God began to create structure. But He didn't create very much. The only way you're going to grasp what I'm saying right here is if you believe, as I do, that God did not make man to live forever, and that He knew that Adam and Eve would not have Eden as their permanent home. Someone then says, well, it must have been a trick. God must have done something cruel. Of course not. But look at Eden in the context of the whole Bible. If Eden was intended to be permanent and Adam and Eve were supposed to live forever, then Jesus would have had to have been an afterthought. And we know that's not true. Scripture plainly tells us that Jesus Christ, slain from the foundation of the world. While the world was without form, Jesus was already a Savior. Did y'all grab that? If you listen to some preaching and teaching nowadays, they make it sound as if God made Eden and man messed it up, and then God had another idea and he tried the Ten Commandments and man messed that up, and God finally sent Jesus. That's not what happened. If you understand, you can grasp what I'm talking about tonight. In Genesis 1 and 3, God began to create a little structure. Stay with me. This will take a little bit more foundation than last night. So in the beginning of Genesis 1 and 3, God created a few pieces of structure. He made some time and some rules for living. But even by the time that we get all the way to Genesis chapter 3, the only real structure to life, the only real rules and timeline is that there is a sun ruling the day, a moon ruling the night, and Adam and Eve need to eat to sustain life, and God meets with Adam in the cool of the day. That's it. How would you like your entire life to consist of 4 basic rules? No bills to pay, no cars to break down, no appointments to make, no aging, no allergies, no ozone layer issues, no racism. Your things are not deteriorating. Society is not falling apart. You are not falling apart. There are no alarms to set. There's no medicine to buy. There's no supplies to pick up. No due dates to remember. Just day, night, food, and God. That's where they were. And then something happened. Society did begin to deteriorate. You've heard the old saying, going downhill fast. This was from the top to the bottom at supersonic speed. I won't get into it all because the details of the story won't affect my point tonight, and besides, you already know the story. The bottom line is, at this point, Adam sinned. Someone said, well, Eve sinned first. God did not have a covenant with Eve. He had a covenant with Adam. The Bible bears this out. Go back and read your Bible again. When Eve sinned, nothing happened. Go read it. When Eve sinned, nothing happened. When Adam sinned, things began to change quickly. After Adam sinned, then the Bible says their eyes were opened, they were naked, they made themselves clothes, and God confronted them. Several places in the New Testament it makes reference to God's covenant with Adam. So Adam sinned and then the world changed. But not forever. The world only changed from Genesis 3 and 14 until Revelations 10 and 6. Because in Revelation 10 and 7, it went back to exactly the way it was before it changed because of sin. You and I live in the changed part. The shortest part of the 3 parts. There was eternity past, there will be eternity future, and there's this little bitty space of time between eternity past and eternity future that you and I call life. Why are we in the change part? Why do we live in this short few thousand years that are different from all the rest of eternity? I submit to you tonight that the reason is simple. It is for mercy's sake. We live in a structured life that is running us ragged for mercy's sake. I intend to attempt to show you tonight that God foreknew everything that was going to take place on earth, and because of his foreknowledge, when he structured life beginning with Adam and Eve after the fall, he did it in such a way that you and I and everyone that ever was or ever will be will have chance after chance after chance after chance to get right with him. From this point on, God implemented clothing that would wear out. He implemented housing that would break down. He implemented work that would be seasonal at best. He implemented seasons that would come and go. He implemented time that would have to be kept and followed. And he made every single one of those rules for you to follow for mercy's sake, so that there would be a renewing chance over and over and over again for you to get right with Him. Before Adam sinned, there had never been stress. There had never been exhaustion. Nobody had ever been late for anything. There was no aging or anxiety or peer pressure. No strained relationships. No broken hearts. Nobody had ever been tired. Nobody had ever been worn down. That all came with sin. But I submit to you tonight that God's divine understanding of all this is why we have the structure that we have in our lives today. God knew that man would be stubborn and self-willed. He knew that you and I would be rebellious and go off half-cocked, making all kinds of mistakes on our own, thinking we were figuring it out when we were just making a bigger mess. God knew that we would suffer at the hands of our own consequences. So He implemented time and minutes and hours and days and weeks and months and seasons and work and shelter and clothing and bills, because in each of these there is a sprinkling of God's mercy. You aren't with me yet? Just stay right here. The Bible teaches us that His mercies are new every morning. Praise God. His mercies are new every morning. The morning is a portion of the day. Go back and read your Bible in Genesis chapter 1 and in Genesis chapter 2. A day that was created by God to be exactly what it was, a day. It was a 24-hour calendar day already in Genesis 1 and in Genesis 2. And it tells us over and over again about God's day. It said in the evening and the morning was the first day. It goes on and explains some things that God made by breathing them and speaking them into existence. Birds and whales and land and sea. And it said the evening and the morning was the second day. Days already existed, but somehow they look backwards. Somehow they look upside down to us, because the evening was the beginning of the day and the morning was the end of the day. That's the way it always was before Adam sinned. But then all of a sudden sin occurred in chapter 3. And a day all of a sudden it's flipped upside down by God. And from Genesis chapter 3 backwards, it was an evening and a morning was a day. But from Genesis chapter 3 forwards, it's always a morning and an evening or a day. Why did God turn it upside down? It is so that His mercies can be new every morning. It is so when you make a mistake and you have a bad day and you wreck your car and you lose your girlfriend and you flunk your test, you can go to bed that night broken, sleep all night unconscious, and wake up the next morning to a brand new set of chances. The things we're so upset about are nothing but structured mercy. Praise God. Oh, help me, Jesus. We begin to look and realize sin is the factor that God used to create this opportunistic phenomenon. Let's take it one step at a time, see if we can pull some things out. How many ever had your life seem to break down and fall apart over several days period of time? Don't raise your hand, because if you didn't raise it, you'd be a lying dog. Amen. You remember what it's like. Tuesday night, the alternator went out on the truck. Wednesday morning, the kid got sick and you had to borrow a car from your mother-in-law to take him into the doctor, and the bill was higher than you expected it to be, and you had to put it on the credit card that you just barely got paid off from last Christmas. Thursday, the boss got mad at you and you got yelled at. You would have quit, but you need the job to pay back off the credit card. Saturday, you were going to mow the lawn, but the mower wouldn't work, and by the time you got it fixed, it had started to rain, and the rain stopped just about the time the sun was going down, and you woke up Sunday morning, you didn't even want to go to church. You got problems at home, problems at the truck, problems at work, financial, physical, mental, emotional trouble. You just don't know what to do with yourself. You finally drug your sorry self in the Sunday morning service. Church was actually pretty good, and you came back Sunday night. The pastor preached a very encouraging message, and you went to the altar and you prayed a little prayer, and you felt a little something, and then did you ever get up Monday morning and feel like somehow you had a clean slate? I'm going to do better this week. This week is my week. The Lord be my helper. I'm going to get the car fixed. My son is on the mend. The boss is going to like me, and I'll mow the lawn when I get off work. Why did you change your tune? Why are you saying things like that? It's just another day in succession of a whole bunch of other days that you've been having all kinds of problems in. What makes you think it's better now? You do it because with each new week you feel a renewed strength. With each new week you feel a renewed set of chances. God made that week for you on purpose. Before this, there was no week. Before Genesis 1 chapter 3, there wasn't a week. After Revelation chapter 10, there'll be no more weeks. You just happen to live in that little space of time throughout eternity where you get a week. Hallelujah. Have you ever went through a long, dull, cold, hard winter? Work was slow. All your projects were put on the back burner. Everything was dark and cold and frozen over. And all of a sudden, one day, things started to change a little bit. You felt the change in the air that started penetrating your spirit. Praise God. You got out the buckets and the sponges one particular morning, and you moved all the furniture, and you swept and vacuumed and dusted and cleaned everything one good time. You stretched the hose back out from out of the shed, and you hosed up the outside of the house, and you went ahead while you was there, and you washed the car, and you could see little green buds popping out on trees and bushes. It was spring, and you felt like you had a whole new set of chances of things. A fresh start seemed to come upon your mind and on your heart. Listen to me, friend, there was no spring, summer, fall, or winter in Eden. You want to be in a place like Eden. You dreamed of the perfect place like where Adam was. But you got chances that Adam didn't have. Spring is for you. Summer is for you. Winter is for you. Fall is for you. It's God creating a system of cycles that says if you don't make it now, I'll give you another chance. Y'all ever move into that new apartment or that first house that you and your brand new wife moved into, and you get that new furniture set? I don't understand what happens sometimes when you get an 18, 19, 20-year-old man and woman that just got married, and they move some of the sorriest boxes, one of the worst junk into their new house. Stuff that I wouldn't even take the time to throw away. But it's their prized possessions. Them 4 forks that don't match, oh, come on. But they're mine. Woo! Got that old lampshade. You seen some of them ugly lampshades, y'all? But they get that first brand new set of furniture. Anybody here remember your first brand new set of furniture? It changed the whole. You put that sofa right where you wanted it. You got out the measuring stick and put the recliner in the perfect spot. And the bookshelf that you put together, you bought that bookshelf at Walmart. Yeah, I ain't talking about the one you still have, because if you bought it at Walmart, you wouldn't still have it. But you remember, getting ready to go to bed at night and you didn't want to go to bed. You're sitting in your brand new recliner looking at your brand new Walmart bookshelf with nothing on it but an old cookbook and an old phone book. And you didn't want to go. It was like, man, look at me. I'm king of the world. Donald Trump ain't got nothing on me. I'm in this $275 a month run-down rickety shack in the back of Billy's property. I ain't got no, I couldn't sell everything I owned for $50 except my brand new couch and my brand new recliner and my bookshelf from Walmart. But just sitting there looking at it and sitting on it, it's like all my problems I had in the past went away. It's like everything I didn't think I could accomplish, now all of a sudden I feel like I can accomplish it. It's like a shot of hope. You get to push the reset button. Listen, it's just some old boards and some material. I sell furniture for a living. There ain't much to furniture anymore. But somehow you think it gives you a new lease on life. It's because God didn't want to leave you struggling through a life with sin and consequences without your whole life being sprinkled here and there and yawned with little moments of mercy, little happenings of hope, little chimes of chances. I can tell you a personal experience. Things like that have happened to me all down through my life. It would be things that you wouldn't care about. It would be things that wouldn't mean a hill of beans to you. But to me, it gave me another chance.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey!
Yes.
Couple of Christmas years ago, I had a very, very long, hard, stressful year. Lots of ministry, never-ending nights, marathon months. Brother Lamb, you know what I'm talking about. We were talking about it today at lunch, Sister April. When you book revivals on top of revivals and you try to squeeze a weekend in between them. Praise God. We took a few days off to be with the family. I preached about 350 times that year. I was mentally, physically, emotionally, completely exhausted. You don't know how many times in that December 2 years ago that I quit the ministry. But somehow I quit it to myself, and before I got a chance to tell anybody I quit, I had taken it back on again. Praise God. We took a few days off to be with our family, and we were trying to get rested up and get reset and ready for the new year. But everything was rush, 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 and spin, spin, spin. I just was not getting the rest. I was not getting the peace of mind that I needed. Finally, on Christmas Day, my family and I were exchanging gifts, just my wife and children and I. And I think maybe one or two of the girls that were eventually going to marry into the family. And my wife likes to save her gift for me for the very last. She brought in this big old box. And it was 5 brand new suits. Now, I know this is just a carnal thing here, but stay with me because I think you're going to relate. I don't know how your finances are, but it is a big, big deal that my wife scrimped and saved 2 years ago for several months and figured out a way to buy me 5 brand new suits. Y'all take a good look at me one more time. I don't buy suits at JCPenney. The mall don't have my suits. I have never bought a piece of clothing, an outside piece of clothing from Walmart. They don't make them for 6'8", 200-pound guys. They just ain't one. My jeans that I was wearing when we went to eat today, I think those are 35 44s or something like that. You don't find those just hanging on the rack at the sale. All right? So when my wife shows up with 5 brand new suits for me, it's a big, big deal. Praise God. I preach and I speak for a living. I wear suits almost every day, and my clothes at that time were wearing so thin I was embarrassed. I was struggling to look as professional and ministerial as I like to. And here I sat in this little room with my family, with smiling and happy and food and gifts and presents. And I got 5 brand new suits. My sons and daughters walked up to me and they gave me some brand new shirts and a couple of brand new neckties. I went right down and got the suits fitted for me. They had to take them in a little. In January, 1 week later of a brand new year, a week after I was exhausted and hurting and miserable as I had been in a long, long time, I showed up to preach a meeting in South Georgia. I walked in the back of that church and looked around at those 100 and some folk. I had a brand new What's going on, preacher? I was experiencing something that God created for me in the Garden of Eden. You're not following me yet. Knowing that I would live in this fallen world. God help me. When God instituted clothing, it wasn't just to punish them. It was to cover the sin of nakedness. But it was structure that could be used over and over and over and over again. All the way down to my life. And sprinkle a little help and a little hope and a little mercy. And right when I needed it most, I was experiencing the structure of getting new clothes for a new year on a Christmas day. Praise God. Watch me now. Pre-Genesis chapter 3 and post-Revelation chapter 10. There is no clothes. There is no new year. And there is no Christmas. I happen to get to live in that little space of time called life where God continually sprinkles mercy after mercy after mercy. And every time I think I'm down and out, God says, here you go, son. I give you another chance. This chance is called Monday. This chance is called a new job. This chance is called a raise. This chance is called 2016.
Yes.
And now, if we are not careful, church, we will despise this structure. We will say things like, I can't wait to retire. We will say things like, I'd like to take that clock and throw it in the river. I'm getting closer, ain't I? We will say things like, I want to live in Bermuda where it's always 70 degrees. Trust me, I live in this fallen world too. I have felt and said those same things. But today, as I look back at some of the structured times that God pre-designed for me, I acknowledge the hope that He instilled in the moment. Hallelujah. When I first moved back into my father's house, after being away from him for several years, I left home when I was 10. And I ran with the gangs and got in a lot of bad trouble and ended up getting removed from the state of California, put back in my father's custody after not seeing him for several years. And a few days after being back in my father's house, I remember he went to a yard sale and he bought me my very own dresser and my very own headboard and footboard and rails and my very own mattress and box spring. I had never had my own dresser. I'd never had my own bed yet in my life. Now I'm 14 years old and he went out and he bought it for me. That night I set it all up in my room and I arranged my room just the way I wanted it for the first time. I can't explain it, Brother Lamb. I was still on drugs. I was still trying to run away. I was still a punk. I was still uneducated. But when I went to bed that night in my room, in my bed, with my dresser, my mattress, it was like I just reached over and pushed the reset button. Like somehow tomorrow morning I'll get up and I won't be the town punk no more. I hope I can tell somebody something. I remember my first day in 9th grade. I hadn't been to school since 5th grade. Went back to Oregon, went back to school after 3 long years of running the streets in Cali. I walked into that school, I was no better and no different than I was when I slept in the alley in Chinatown. But I had on a brand new pair of 501 jeans that my dad bought for me at the farm store the day before, and a brand new t-shirt. And I had raggedy old shoes because they didn't have shoes big enough for me at the farm store. And I walked in there to high school. And it was, I'm telling you, it was like I just could reach right over and just push the reset button. Like all of a sudden, because I'm presently in a school, people are going to look at me and perceive me to be educated. I remember paying $800 cash of my own hard-earned money for my first car. 1972 Volkswagen Bug. Somebody said, you could get in that little old thing? Yeah. Yeah, I could. It had the most legroom in any car in the world. There ain't no motor up there. The motor's in the back. When I got in that car and started that thing, for the first time, they go, boom, they do that. Put that little thing in gear, pop that clutch. I pushed the reset button. It was like I got a whole new chance at life because I had an $800 car. I remember these things now. I remember asking my wife to go with me on our first date. I remember my first day of college. My first day of my real full-time job. I remember holding my first son, Justin. I remember the night Sean was born and the night Ducky was born. I remember when Tears was born. See, I was lost when all three of my sons were born. My daughter, my baby's the only child that I ever had born into a saved home. And my wife had just got saved